Welcome back to Potentially Rare Switch Games. I haven't made an episode of this for a good couple of years, but now that the Switch is coming to the end of its life cycle, I think it's actually quite interesting to return to this and see what games have gone on to be worth a good bit of money, and what new releases for the system are going to be potentially worth some cash, as the namesake says. So what I've done is I picked the game that actually has come out earlier this month in June of 2023, and that's Loop8 The Summer of Gods. Now this is quite an intriguing game that's based very much like a roguelike, where you have sort of a permanent death of your characters, and sort of turn-based battle mechanic, but also it's almost like a visual novel as well, with various sort of different plot twists and turns throughout the game. And I was actually very, very impressed by this game, even though it's had very mixed reviews from the people that sort of played it and reviewed it professionally. So basically, the game starts off in 1983 in a fictional Japanese town, and basically mankind is struggling for survival against demons called the Kagai, and your little town is basically one of the last remaining ones, and you are a character called Nini, who's a teenager who grew up in space, and basically that was destroyed by the Kagai, so he comes down, he's living in this town now, he ends up living with what seems to be his cousin, and the whole idea of the game is it starts off on the 1st of August and doesn't really tell you much about the characters or anybody you're going to interact with up to this point, and the idea of the game is it will last for the entirety of the August month. Now, hence why it's called Loop8, obviously 8 being the 8th month of the year, and also it looping, when things go south, which I think is a great idea, but I think this is the reason why a lot of people don't particularly get along with this game and wonder why this mechanic was introduced. That what happens is, should things go wrong in the story, which it can happen in a number of ways, the story will just reset itself and just go back to August the 1st again like nothing ever happened. You do get to keep some of your stats and relationships that you've built up with characters in a sense. It does all reset, but what happens is where the stuff that you had a sort of strength and weakness in before, you can double up the time it'll take to re-get those stats up again. So like the more times that the game resets, the quicker that these stats can then increase again. So it kind of helps you up in this sense, but a lot of people have sort of turned against it for the monotony of having to redo various dialogue sections again and pieces of the story. Bear in mind that it's very heavy text based, and almost when you loop, the game's always promoting you just basically skipping through a lot of the story dialogue to get back to where you were before in sort of a frantic battle against time. This sort of game mechanic can be done quite well. I mean, we've seen it with Zelda Majora's Mask and other classic titles like that, but this one perhaps doesn't do it quite as well. But there are multiple paths and endings based on who you build your relationships up with and who ends up surviving through the end of the game. As I said earlier, with the roguelike settings, there is permanent death if the characters don't survive the battles that you go through. But the battling system is actually quite simplistic in its execution. You take in up to 2 characters with you that you've got a good rapport with into like sort of an underworld where some of your characters have been possessed that you encounter on your travels. Each week a character will get possessed, and then after the 3rd day you do get the opportunity, once you find out who it is and where the story arc unlocks itself, to be able to go to the shrine, to go into the underworld. You then have to battle them, but the story can be easy or hard depending on how well you've built up a rapport with the characters themselves. So 1, the people that are battling with you, and 2, the person you're battling against. You have 3 things that you can use. So you use affection, friendship, or hate as a battling mechanism. Now I found with this game it was far easier just to use affection or friendship, because the aim is that you want to try and save your your colleagues and friends from the Kagai themselves. If you keep using hate as a mechanism, which is the more powerful way of battling these sort of demons and gods and stuff, you'll find that you might not get the opportunity to save the character that has been possessed once the time comes. So yeah, from what I see about this game, it is basically about saving everybody and just being an all-time good guy. So yeah, that's basically the story of the game, and the graphics of the game are absolutely fantastic, particularly for the Switch version here. Yeah, it was really well animated and really, I found as soon as I was thrown into the game world, as small as it is, it's almost like sort of perfectly formed and very, very quaint. The atmosphere is certainly there with sort of the cicadas and stuff that are chirping in the backgrounds, and the sun flare that's coming through like the trees and the various scenery. It's an absolutely gorgeous game to look at, and I think this is one of the massive saving graces of this game itself, is the graphics and the atmosphere. The sound is good, the music's great. The voice acting is absolutely brilliant as well. You don't get voice acting all the time, but in key scenes, like most RPG games, you will get a full sort of English dialogue, which is absolutely great. Why I think that this game's going to be quite rare is that I think that this is going to be a sort of an appreciating classic as time moves forward. It's one of those that's not particularly expensive to buy new at the moment. Within a couple of weeks of its release, you could get it for $32.99 in Great Britain, which is a good price for it. But I do think it's going to drop further. I think you'll find that this game might very well be £25, £20 by the time that its initial print run is sold out. And when that happens, I think that's going to represent a bargain, because what you'll find is once all those new copies go, I doubt that this will ever get a digital code re-release, and I certainly don't think it'll get a second print run. So this leads us to, when people start discussing this game and start to understand it a little bit more and appreciate it, I think people are going to try and seek it out, and it's going to be one of those that if you bought it at 20 quid, at sort of fire sale level, it's going to be double that in no time at all. And dare I say, in 10 years' time, this is going to be one of those games that's you're not going to get much change out of 60 or 70 quid. It's a bold statement for me to say because I don't know for sure, but just I've got a reasonable sort of inkling that this is going to be the case with this game. I really enjoyed it, and I'm sitting with it and staying with it. The story is about sort of 20 to 25 hours. If you know what you're doing, if you're taking into account the loops as well, then you could be upwards of about 30 to 40 hours on this. But I do recommend that if you do see this game cheap enough, pick it up, stick it in your collection, give it a try as well. Don't just pick it up thinking, oh, well, this is just going to be a shelf follower that's going to stay with me for ages. It is an experience, and it's well worth playing before the years go by, and it's worth some money and worth selling. But that's just my view. Yours might differ, but I'd love to hear from you in the comments to see if you did buy this game, what your thoughts and views are on it. Has it got any saving graces? Do you just hate it in general? It does seem to be divisive across the board as to whether people love this game or whether they hate it. Drop us a comment, and we will see whether this game ends up being worth good money in years to come. And I'll catch you in another episode. Ta-ra.